what's the deal with the Fnaf story, man? Why is it the way it is? I mean, I can't really name a franchise that had more inconclusive twists and turns than this one. From one curveball to another, the community that still dare try and piece together this narrative have been stumped on what is definitive and just silly. It seems that the concrete foundation of the story has gotten more shaky as the games went on. It comes to a point where things we even thought were set in stone get changed with the drop of a hat. Game. What bugs me the most is it's not usually in some basic storytelling faction, it's usually in these obscure corners of the game or an offhand detail we find out months later. It is no secret Fnaf has some of the most inconclusive storytelling in the market, and I want to go through some of its biggest examples.
Connection terminated.
Was that the bite of 87?
Was it really? Because I don't know at this point. Bite of 87 is a looming mystery that's been hung over the franchise since the very first game. This offhand comment by Phone Guy became one of the biggest points of conversation for the community. Originally, the main culprit of this crime was Foxy. In the original FNAF lineup, Foxy was the only animatronic that was out of order and continued to stay out of order throughout the course of the game. His decrepit state of well-being, like, just look at him, could be also evidence of an abandoned animatronic, an animatronic that was abandoned for biting someone's frontal lobe. It made logical sense, but logical sense doesn't fly in this franchise.
What the fuck? No!
Then FNAF 2 rolled around and the key suspect became Mangle. Still, Foxy counterpart. This was on the basis that the Mangle's jump scare looked like it bites your frontal lobe off. You know, like the bite of 87. This was a solid theory, and for a while it was going around the community as fact. But FNAF 4 released and we got the bombshell that the main culprit of this horrific accident was no other than Frederick Fazbear. Who would have guessed? Not only did we finally close the case on that mystery, but we got to see it in 4K, or 16-bit. I'm just glad that was settled. Oh, that was the bite of 83. Oh, so there were two frontal lobe incidents that frustratingly have nothing to do with each other. How convenient. I seriously don't get why Scott made an entirely different bite incident, but who am I to question the creative genius of the man behind Robot Children and Time Machine Ball Pits? But yeah, the bite of 87 was never really confirmed to be any animatronic. It's never even been confirmed who was the victim. It was assumed it was a child that it happened to, but during the FNAF 2 era, people were dead set on it being the security guard Jeremy. But it turns out Jeremy is one of the original 5 children that went missing, and also the Help Wanted beta tester, and also William Afton. Yeah, so maybe the bite of 87 just never happened, a hoax the Phone Guy created to scare the player, or maybe he just mixed up the dates. Or Fredbear did the bite of 83 and Golden Freddy did 87. Speaking of Golden Freddy,
wait a minute! Who are you?
Golden Freddy is a staple to the franchise, being the Sonic EXE of Freddy Fazbear, another prominent character and prominent mystery since the beginning. He's literally an integral piece of the plot of the games because he holds the vengeful spirit inside him that's been orchestrating a lot of the major events in the games. So, imagine how appalled I was when MatPat posted a 23-minute video gaslighting me into thinking he never existed. Yes, this important character that's shown up time and time again and has had one of the only few character arcs in this series has never existed. So, who the hell are you? Who do I blame for this?
Hello? Hello?
In FNAF VR, during the first 5 minutes of the game, they decided to drop the biggest turning point in the franchise.
Last few decades, and while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending.
Throughout the entirety of the previous games, all the horrors, stories, fun, all those experiences weren't real. I mean, no figure, right? But it's super meta now because the games were games in the universe. The games were all a psychotic trip from a madman trying to slander the Fazbear Company name. A lot of the details throughout the franchise before Help Wanted were overly exaggerated, downright fictitious, and incredibly poor taste based on some rumors around Fazbear Entertainment. Pretty much the story of this franchise is so indecisive that it can't decide if the bulk of it is canon or not. masterclass in story writing. I do want to clarify that a lot of the game's events did happen, but to the degree and fashion it was portrayed is completely up in the air. That means any plot hole, any corner, any oversight can easily be rolled away under the safety net of the game's not being real. This was done in favor to progress the story, finally put down a turning point for new greater things to come, but we still ended up going back to William Afton in that whole plotline. I'll get to that purple bastard in a second, but honestly, put Security Breach and Fnaf 1 next to each other, and you expect me to believe that Fnaf 1 is the game and not Security Breach? I mean, Security Breach is a giant jump in realism, even compared to the most experimental game, Sister Location. So you're telling me this isn't the one that wasn't possibly exaggerated, downright fictitious, and an incredibly poor taste? Right. And then there was the biggest offender.
I always come back. Criminal.
Oh shit, he's back. Why can't you die already? What is it about William Afton, the purple guy, man behind the slaughter that keeps him in the story? Why can't we move on from him? He got what he deserves like 3 times already, so why do we keep bringing him back? I get that William Afton, in terms of actual story characters, is possibly the biggest in the franchise. He's essential to the plot of Fnaf because without him, none of the stuff in the story would have happened. He was responsible for all the major plot points in some way or another, especially the horrific acts committed. So why does it take so many games to wrap his story up? He wrapped it up in 3. Almost. Then he came back to it in 6 to officially end it. So why oh why do we have to have this glitch trap, a serial killer virus manifesting into the real world, plaguing the very game we're playing, reminding us of something we got over 2 games ago? Well, the concept of glitch trap is cool, but when context is added, you start to realize it doesn't do well. Him surviving being crushed alive in the world's most complicated fursuit, then burned to the ground with the last few strands of relevance his company had, then burned again in the exact same fashion. The topper was him being sent to hell on Ultimate Custom Night to suffer an endless torment of a click team game. Wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So how does he come back as a sentient virus? Fnaf is no stranger for dipping its toes in sci-fi, but I genuinely think the experimental plot lines influenced by science fiction are one of its worst. The Fnaf story used to be somewhat simple. Yeah, it had its twists and turns, and yes, the occasional curveballs that really don't make sense no matter how you flip it, but you could still grasp the story. Nowadays, you need to flock to whatever YouTuber who posted their most recent Fnaf timeline because the older ones have a shelf life of a gallon of milk. I know Afton's whole catchphrase is,
I always come back.
but it should have just been that, a catchphrase, like Papa John's, better pizza, better ingredients. We all let them say that, but I know most of you wouldn't be caught dead inside of a Papa John's. And it seems whoever writing these Fnaf games wouldn't be caught dead writing a cohesive story. There are a lot of story elements of Fnaf that just don't make sense, and at the risk of losing my retention rate and turning this into a video essay, I think I'll stop here. Or hey, I'll save it for some other niche Fnaf commentary YouTuber that will get 1,000,000 times the success with less of the effort. Me on the other hand, I just hope I didn't spend another 2 weeks working on another flop.
Connection terminated.